Now, a month ago, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions embarked on a case review exercise with the aim of not only speeding up cases, but also decongesting prison facilities across the country. During the first phase of the exercise conducted here in Nairobi, it was established that 80% of those in remand prisons have been granted bail, though they cannot meet the high terms afforded to them. Let's just take that out.
The slow process of trial and bureaucracy in the Kenyan criminal justice system is one of the reasons as to why Kenya's correctional facilities are still congested. A case review exercise conducted by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions from the 22nd of January this year established that most of the remandees at the Nairobi Industrial Area Remand Prison continue to languish in the correctional facility due to their inability to raise the bail terms granted by the court. The situation is no different at the Langata Women's Prison, where 176 cases were reviewed, with most of the remandees saying they could not meet the high bond terms. An observation that was also made at the Committee Juvenile Prison, with the ODPP establishing that 45 cases out of the 57 reviewed could not afford bail. The Kenya Prison Services is comprised of 118 penal facilities, 115 of which are for adult offenders, 2 borstal facilities, and 1 youth correctional facility. The current population of these prisons is about 54,000, with remandees making up 48% of the total population. These numbers far exceed the current capacity of the facilities, and thus the ODPP has to move with speed if they are to be decongested. With the case review exercise set to be rolled out to Embu, Meru, and Shimolatewa in the coming weeks, there are certain legal interventions that the ODPP can institute. The law allows the ODPP to engage in plea agreement negotiations, pursue alternatives to trials like diversion, alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, as well as encourage reconciliation. Janet Chapia, KTN News.
Right, and that's the conversation I want us now to have in studio, and I also invite you to be part of it. Joining me is Dorcas Odor. She is the Secretary, Public Prosecutions. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. Right, so you had this exercise about 3 weeks ago at the Nairobi Remand Prison. Maybe we could just go through, Janet has highlighted a couple of them, but some of the issues that we know were raised during that exercise.
Okay, one of the main issues that was raised by the remandees is that most of them, in fact, more than 80% of them, have been granted bail or bond by the judiciary. However, according to them, and according to us out of the review, the bail terms or the bond terms were too high, they could not afford. Taking into account that most of them who were in remand were actually not people of means.
Yes.
So they found the bail terms very high.
So that's the reason that they just stay there, and then the congestion now, of course,
yes, because
up.
Most of them cannot afford. Those who can afford would bail themselves or pay cash bail and go through their trial when they're at home. But in this case, they cannot afford, so they have to be in remand until their cases are concluded.
All right. And looking at the numbers, what numbers are we looking at? Just from the pictures there, you could see, like, really, it's quite a number of people.
The most discouraging thing is that when we went there on the 22nd, the Nairobi Remand Prison, which is one of the biggest in the country, had about 2,600 remandees, and the Nairobi Medium Prison, which is just next door, had about 500 remandees. Within 1 week, when we were issuing our interim report on the findings of the Nairobi Remand Prison, the number had already escalated to more than 3,000.
Wow.
So that's how bad it is.
That's how bad it is.
Yes.
And what is the situation, the conditions then in there? Maybe if we could just understand that from a social perspective. What is how is it in there?
Well, I wouldn't say much about how it is inside because we didn't go into the nitty-gritties of the conditions. Right. But what I can say is that the Nairobi Remand Prison was meant to house 1,200 remandees. It now has 3,000. So we can't overstate how congested it is.
Okay.
Yes.
So moving forward, I know that this exercise will be conducted in different parts of the country. We'll be talking about that. But what are the fast-hand mitigation, processes that, you think should be undertaken?
The first-hand mitigation activities that can be done by our office, because we are looking at the core mandate of the office, is that we are reviewing all the cases of the remandees. And in the course of the review, not just 3,000, we have already done collected data from 3,000, which is Nairobi remand. Other than the 3,000, we have collected about 600 from the Langata women, and then about 50 from the Kamiti juvenile, and we did another about 40 at the Kabete juvenile. Now, collecting data is that the initial step that we are undertaking, because as we are collecting the data, we are speaking to the remandees to know their special circumstances. After collecting this data, we've been calling for all the files, individual files, and reviewing each individual file. If we find that, for example, this case has been in court for very long and witnesses do not come to court, we want to find out why witnesses are not coming. If it is a petty case and witnesses are not coming, some of them, in fact, up to now, I think we have reviewed about 50 cases, and 30 of them have gone home. And then we have instances where the courts themselves have discharged out of the numbers we had. So we're actually moving very fast.
So you can say that the exercise has been fruitful. All right, let's now also just talk about this exercise that you'll be conducting in other places around the country. Is the situation the same as it is in Nairobi, or is it a bit better?
The situation would be the same, because if you look at the Nairobi remand, the Nairobi medium, the Langata women and the Kamiti juvenile, 82% have bail, but they cannot afford. More than 70% or 80% do not have legal representation. And most of them, their cases have taken very long. You find, for example, somebody stays in remand for more than a year before their case has commenced.
Right.
And it is the same all over. So it is only the statistics that will change, but the reasoning seems to be consistent. Yes.
So what would be the permanent, solutions? Because what you're doing right now, just reviewing the cases, I'm sure it's a lot of work also.
It is. Taking into account the austerity measures and budgetary cuts. Yes.
So what would be like a permanent, solution to all these issues?
A permanent solution to all these issues is that, like the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, we are going to resensitize our prosecutors, because although the police are the door to the criminal justice system, once you have been arrested, it is the prosecution counsel or the DPP's officer who is supposed to decide whether or not you are going to be charged.
Yes.
So since we have taken over the charging process, we will make sure that we use our mandate to make sure that only those cases that deserve to go to court will go to court.
And how will you measure that?
We will measure that by, we are going to review our guidelines on making the decision to charge. That is where the issue is. As you're making the decision to charge, for example, I would give you a case of, okay, let me tell you first, for a prosecutor to make a decision to charge, you have got 3 tests that you must apply.
Yes.
The first test is the evidential test. You're asking yourself, do I have sufficient evidence in this file to warrant a conviction with a reasonable prospect of conviction?
Yes.
What that means is that you're looking at the evidence. This is factual. You're looking at the evidence, then you look at the evidence against the law and the ingredients, and you're saying, I have sufficient evidence to go to court. Secondly, you're saying, is it in the public interest to take this matter to court?
Yes.
Now, in the public interest, one of the things you should be asking yourself, is it cost effective? What is the purpose of punishment in this case? And then there is a threshold test where you have got enough evidence, it is in the public interest, but maybe you don't have one thing or another. So as a prosecutor, when you apply our minds looking at these cases, most of these cases have gone to court when the evidence is actually not with the courts. For example, you find, I will give you an example of traffic cases because it is the best example that you are dealing with now. When you're arrested with a traffic offense, you're given summons to attend court, isn't it?
Yes.
When you're given summons to attend court, your file is not in court. The prosecutor does not have the statement of the arresting officer, does not have the statement of the investigating officer. You had not been given an opportunity to say something before you were charged. So not having this statement, how am I going to make the decision that this case should go to court?
Okay.
So you come and take a plea and you go through the court system. You are told that you've been released on bail of 5,000, cash bail of 5,000, or 10,000 bond. You realize even when you are arguing the bail application in court, nobody knows the circumstances of the case, how grievous it is. So even for the prosecutor, they could not have made a decision that this is a case where I just need to warn. This is a case where I have no business taking it to court, because when they read the statement of the arresting officer and then they read what you told the arresting officer at that instance.
Yes.
For example, you tell the arresting officer, I have my driving license,
Yes.
I have left it at home.
Yes.
Give me 10 minutes to bring it. Okay, it's an offense not to carry a driving license, but the fact that you have it and you can bring it can make me rethink whether this is a case that I should take to court.
Right.
And then there are cases, for example, where people don't wear PSV uniform. Maybe this person, something happened to him or he left it at home. Are these the correct cases that would be taken to court? And you find when there is a swap in town.
So there are many of the petty crimes.
So I'm saying the State Council has the authority and the power and the tools to make sure that they can regulate the number of cases that go to court. For example, you see when there is a swap in town and you arrest 3,000 hawkers,
yes.
or you arrest 500 people. You imagine when they come to court in the morning, none of them has a file.
Yeah.
So first of all, how do you ascertain how old they are? What are the circumstances of the case? So even when you're arguing bail and saying that a cash bail of 5,000, the prosecutor is saying I'm opposing bail, you have nothing in your hands. But if all these things were known before, a prosecutor can make a decision beforehand. You remember what you read about alternatives to prosecution?
Yes, alternatives to
You
prosecution.
can still warn.
Yes.
You can still say this person is below the age of this, I should not take them through the whatever.
The process.
You can listen to their defenses or what they have to say, and they can inform you on what step you need to take other than taking them through court.
So you can encourage reconciliation,
Yes.
the alternatives that you were talking about.
So we are saying is that we want to empower our prosecutors to be able to make the correct decisions before they charge people. And for them to be able to do that, we are going to demand that we have got threshold on each, a threshold minimum requirement on every case, so that we don't go to court not knowing what the evidence is, or we don't go to court for the case to take very long because the witnesses are not there. By the time we go to court, at least we have everything that we need.
Something that
so that's one of the things that we are doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll get back to the conversation, but I just want us to see some live pictures coming in from the Milimani Law Courts. Remember that another top story that we're looking at this morning is Nandi Hills Member of Parliament Alfred Keter is said to be arraigned in court today to answer to charges of forging treasury bills. You will remember that he was arrested on a Friday in the company of two others, and therefore, there you see him. He's in court already, and I will be crossing over there shortly to just listen into that case. Remember that this case has really elicited massive public interest, and you also have leaders joined from the Rift Valley who've come out to, of course, condemn his arrest, saying that it is indeed a witch hunt, a political witch hunt. So we'll be crossing over there in a few minutes to follow through with what's happening. Alfred Keter, finally, at the Milimani Law Courts, set to answer to charges of forging treasury bills worth up to 633 million shillings. We'll be crossing over there shortly to listen to that. All right, but coming back to our conversation here in studio. So now you've talked about, some of the offenses that, are making, the remandees stay in the prisons for so long. In the order of the offenses, which ones do you have most? Are those the traffic offenses, or do we have some serious crimes that also are many in number in the prisons?
Well, we have in prisons. In the prisons, in fact, we I think they are spread. Most of them are serious offenses: murder, robbery with violence, defilement, which are very serious. And then you have petty offenses. You have preparation to commit a felony. You have traffic offenses. You have a dumping of waste. Very funny. You even have people in remand who are in there because they were found smoking in public and they cannot afford bail terms. Yes.
That is so serious.
Yes, that is very serious.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you have those numbers of. So can you say that the petty crimes are normally more than the other serious offences?
They are not more as such, because for the people who are in prison, you find that for more serious offences, the bail terms are quite high, and those are the ones who really cannot afford.
Yeah.
So it's 50-50. Yeah.
So after you leave Nairobi, you're heading out to, is it?
After we leave Nairobi this week, in fact, tomorrow we'll be Nyeri and Embu, and then on Wednesday we'll be doing Meru, and then from the 26th to the 28th we are doing Shimolatewa prison in Mombasa, and then we are doing Kodiaga prison in Kisumu. And then after that we'll be considering going to Kisii, and then after Kisii we move to Western.
So it's going to be spread out across the country.
We are going to review all the remandees in the whole country.
Wow, that's a lot of work. And also, just talking about work, there's of course a financial aspect, because I can imagine the team that you're working with. How is that going? Also going with the current,
In fact,
austerity measures being put in place.
Really spreading. We are really spreading our wings, but we are very thin financially. And we were hoping that by doing this, because we just have a new strategic plan this year. And one of the goals in our strategic plan is quality public prosecutions. But when you're talking about quality public prosecutions, your clients must understand who you are, what you do, to be able to cooperate with you. Because in many cases, when you say that prosecutors don't work or our work is very shoddy, it also depends on the cooperation we get from the accused persons, from the witnesses, from the victims, and from the complainants. So we just felt that we need to go back to the public, we need to go back to these clients and really tell them who we are and what we are able to do.
All right.
And good enough should people appreciate where we are coming from, because we are looking at the basics.
Yes.
If you're talking about congestion, what is the cause of congestion? What is it like? What can you do? That's exactly what you are doing. We hope that by doing this, we'll be able to attract sufficient budgetary allocation because we have gone back to the core mandate of the office.
All right.
Yes.
Interesting. Thank you very much for your time.
Yes. Yes.
Odor, she is the Secretary of Public Prosecutions. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks. And all the best in your... it sounds like a lot of work, so all the best in that.
On Friday, we might have a media breakfast where we want to talk about the challenges of prosecuting traffic offences. And we want to start a conversation.
This traffic offences seems to be like a very...
Because they're almost 40% of the total number of criminal cases 40%. In the country. And as you were
those are those things about
congestion,
leaving the driving license at home.
Yes, not wearing PSV uniform. So as we talk about congestion, you know, because the cases are taking very long, we ought to remove cases which should not be in court at all, so that we let the court deal with very serious cases. It is the feeling of the ODPP that if we deal properly with traffic offences, we would decongest the court and we leave state counsel and judicial officers with sufficient time to at least deal with other more serious offences. Not all traffic cases, but the non-moving ones, like not wearing a PSV uniform, not carrying a license, touting, you know, things like that.
Things like that.
Yes.
Okay, all the best in that, Dorcas. Dorcas Odor, the Secretary of Public Prosecutions in the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. A mouthful. All right, thank you for your time.
Come also. Next time you have to...
next time they'll definitely come on set. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
All right. No, you can just have a seat. It's fine. Yeah. Right. So we will be taking a short commercial break and we're coming back to continue with our coverage. Remember, we're looking at what is happening at the Milimani Law Courts. One of which, of course, is Nandi Hills Member of Parliament Alfred Keter is currently in court and he is expected to answer to charges of forging treasury bills. We'll be having that in the next hour or in the next few minutes. Don't go away.